When you think of Rush, many of y'all probably have memories of Operation Metro or Locker. Just waves of bodies slamming into each other, explosives everywhere, and a constant grind to get to that next MCOM. But I'm sure some of y'all out there think of something a bit more like this. A slower, more deliberate armored and infantry push through Erica Harbor. Or maybe you love trying to get a foothold on the islands in Operation Mortar. Or maybe you were one of those guys who'd always grab a helicopter at Lankang Dam and hot drop a squad into the first MCOMs. Rush in Battlefield 6 has a problem, and that problem is that it doesn't feel like any of this. Now, I'm not going to be a doomer and say that Rush is dead or there's no save in the game mode, or that I didn't even have fun with it, because I did. I still had those plays where I clutched out a defuse or plant, or when our team pulled off a great push and you could see the old Battlefield synergy develop in front of you. Battlefield 6 Rush still got me hyped, and I still really liked playing it. But the problem is, there was always a moment in playing Battlefield 6 where I just got over it. I felt like this could be so much better. I was having fun, but just not as much fun as I know I could be. It could be a minute in, 5 minutes in, 10 minutes, whatever, but every single game of Rush I played this past weekend, it just left me with this horrible feeling that something was wrong. It was missing that one thing that just made it awesome and unforgettable. After every game, I never really felt like I wanted to play another round of Rush, and that's something I've really never experienced before in Battlefield. Throughout the weekend on YouTube, Reddit, Discord, Twitter, everywhere, I was seeing people absolutely dunk on this version of Rush, and the vast majority of complaints said that the whole problem was that the game mode needed more players and that the MCOM locations needed a complete overhaul. MCOMs were too close to the defenders, they were too close to each other, they were too close to the attackers. But is all of that true? Is it a problem that the defenders spawn on the MCOMs sometimes, or that the MCOMs themselves are right next to each other? Is Battlefield 6 uniquely wrong in their MCOM placement? Are the player numbers really that different with a 12v12 instead of 32 versus 32? Does that make or break a game of Rush? Well, the benefit we have with Battlefield is that we can quite literally go back and play these older versions. And I'm going to say something that might be controversial here, but a lot of these opinions on Battlefield 6's Rush is all based on bad nostalgia. Yeah, I'm not saying that all these takes are completely wrong, but I actually just completely stopped playing the Battlefield 6 beta this weekend, and I went straight into the older games, so this was all fresh on my mind. I wanted to have just played Battlefield 6 and came off that feeling of something was missing so that I could then go into Battlefield 3 or Battlefield 4 and even the OG Rush game with Battlefield Bad Company 2. I wanted to see what was missing, and I can say confidently that yes, these games do Rush so much better, but it's actually not as bad as people are making out to be. Nostalgia does weird things to memories, especially when it comes to how we think games used to play. These rose-tinted glasses seem to fog all of the negative things that we might have experienced, and the things that were fun and that we love doing stay fresh in our mind, and that might just completely skew what the game actually was like. I think because Battlefield 6 is so similar to Battlefield 3 and 4, this nostalgia is clouding so many people's judgment on what actually happened during those past games. So before we dive straight into the older Battlefields, let's first explain why so many people think Rush in Battlefield 6 sucks. Now, first off, by the second weekend, let's just be honest with ourselves, the novelty of Battlefield 6 beta maps had officially worn off. I think a big part of the reason why so many people were so negative about Battlefield 6 during the second beta weekend was because the players were just all getting CQB fatigue. I know for a fact that I was. 3 out of the 4 maps that we've played during the beta are very small maps for Battlefield games. Admittedly though, I really like them. I think they're well designed, and I'm of the opinion that Empire State is one of the better maps that we have in Battlefield 6. Now, I'm not someone who would willingly play these maps over and over again though. I like Conquest large maps like Caspian Border or even Battlefield 1's Sinai Desert. I want distance between objectives and tons of vehicles, and we just didn't get that. But what's worse is that when we got the Rush versions of these small maps, they were even smaller. If we take the smallest map, Empire State, and we overlay the Rush sectors onto the Conquest map, you can see that we can't even play on half of the normal playable area. This removes many flanking routes and all that verticality in the buildings that actually opened up the map and made it feel so much larger than it really was. Without all this extra space to move around, the entire experience playing Rush feels very claustrophobic for both defenders and attackers. You're constantly pushed into the same path to the objective over and over again. But this isn't just an Empire State problem. If we take a look at Siege of Cairo, half of the city is just removed. Iberian Offensive? Yeah, that's probably the worst defender out here. Iberian is a tiny map to begin with, and the playable area for Rush is about 40% of what it is in Conquest. That makes no sense to me. Now, Liberation Peak is a bit better and gives the attackers a tank, but there are still weird design choices like removing this little cliffside flank on the north side while also preventing players from flanking around the mountain on the south side. Every time I played Rush in Battlefield 6, I just felt like I couldn't stretch out. I wanted to move somewhere else, but the game wouldn't let me. I wanted to set up my defense at a different angle or attack from a side that the enemy wasn't going to expect. This is what makes Rush so interesting over the years, and you see all that in the older versions of it. If we take the most straightforward of Rush maps, Operation Locker, it is just a meat grinder, but you still have a variety of different ways to get to these MCOMs. Attackers can go inside, they can go outside, you pop off in one of these doors above or below the area. As a defender, you have to keep an eye out on the map and constantly be aware of pushes in and around your sector. Even though it's sold as just a meat grinder where you're just bashing each other's heads in, there's a lot of playable space here away from both team spawns. And this allows for teams to get a foothold in various pockets on the map. Whenever you get this foothold, you start to get a bit of a critical mass and you start to constantly creep towards the objectives and can plant on these MCOMs. One great example of this was the cliffside where, as a defender, my squad had to fight our way out of the MCOM location. We had to clear this top cliff site and then fight our way behind the cliffs to destroy the enemy squad's respawn beacon. There's no way movement or a beacon like this could be used in Battlefield 6 because the sector size just doesn't allow for it. The sectors are so tiny that they barely cover the MCOMs themselves, while the rest of the playable area is just a protected spawn for either team. But this type of flanking and maneuvering isn't just useful for the large chaotic rush games like Locker or Metro. When you open the map, it allows for individual players and squads to make plays. Multiple times in Bad Company 2, I took a longer route to get behind the enemy defenders and I took them by surprise. An unexpected attack from an undefended side, timed with the normal frontal push from my teammates, resulted in us being able to take out an MCOM and then clear the sector. On Lake Kangdam, we're able to defend most of the attacks fairly well due to the map's natural choke point at the edge of the factory, but the hillside was still in play. This hillside off to the right still gave the enemy a way to slowly creep up their tank without it getting killed. As the tank slowly made its way to the point, infantry squads continued to push, and this was all timed with a full helicopter drop on the MCOM station. This absolutely overwhelmed us as defenders, and the attackers destroyed the MCOM. This is where Battlefield 6 gets it so wrong. In past Battlefields, you can experience this ebb and flow of attackers and defenders. There are attacking moments and there are defending moments from both teams. Areas of the map will be lost to the defenders, attackers will try and hold, and if enough team members get up to them, it creates this foothold that's used to continue the pressure. The area where we were fighting was slowly changing. We still hadn't lost a single MCOM. If you just took a look at the map, we were in the first sector, they were losing a bunch of tickets, and we still had both MCOMs alive, but we actually weren't fully in control of this defensive sector. The buildings were starting to get overrun, and our entire right flank was wide open. In Battlefield 6, there isn't enough room for this. It's pretty much an attack for the entire length of the game. There's barely any space to move around, and both teams are almost always on the MCOM. They're always fighting in that room. This is why I get so frustrated playing Battlefield 6's Rush, because the firefights in and around the MCOMs are really fun, but it's over so quickly. There's no need to carve out space and footholds if your spawn is quite literally just a few feet from it every single time. We don't have the buildup, we don't have the tension, we just have the go, 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 and that isn't fun. I honestly think this is why so many players think that Battlefield 6 has an MCOM placement problem. There are plenty of older Battlefield games that have MCOMs right next to each other, or even right up against the defender's spawns, but the sectors themselves are larger, so it allows teams to have more space to attack, to defend, to be pushed back, to push back in. The firefights around the MCOMs are not static. They constantly move around. Unfortunately, if we take a look at any one of Battlefield 6's sectors, we rarely see a large playable area, and instead, both teams' spawn locations flush up against where the MCOMs are. Players are no longer trying to find ways into these MCOMs, they are literally fighting on top of them within seconds all of the time. But there's another factor at play here. In Battlefield 6, we weren't playing with regular class loadouts a lot of the time. It was open weapons, as the devs call it, meaning that classes could use any primary weapon. In past battlefields, if you wanted to run, let's say, the SGX in order to clear out a flank and locker, you would swap to Engineer. The SMG was great for close quarters combat, you could completely break apart a defensive line, but if your team didn't follow you in with ammo bags and health, you wouldn't hold that spot. Yeah, you would have killed a few people, but the defenders would flow back in. There were quite a few times on locker where I actually started to run out of ammo, and I noticed that I just had health crates nearby, not ammo crates, and I would then see that our defensive line would begin to fall apart. There's an element of attrition to these older games. In Battlefield 6, however, if you wanted to grab the SGX, you could simply stay support, you could equip the SMG, and then when you secured the MCOM station, you could drop your supply crate, drop a defensive shield, and then hunker down with health and ammo while still having plenty of close quarters stopping power. There's no give and take in Battlefield 6, and that means that these moments that used to be real firefights with a constant attacking and defending flow are instead over within seconds. Additionally, because players would now just pick kits that give them ammo and health instead of the quote-unquote useless kits like Engineers, we have a significant drop-off in things like RPGs. Restricting players to kits and gadgets means that they will be forced to use everything in that kit, and a player who has to use his engineer kit in order to use the SMG may be more likely to fire an RPG through a building to remove cover for the defenders, or they might even use a stinger to destroy a recon's UAV in the sky. Less restrictions actually creates less creative gameplay and makes for very repetitive and forgettable games. Players no longer have to play rock, paper, scissors with their classes. They don't have to rely on their teammates. They can just do everything by themselves and win. And this is why I don't think the game would have fundamentally changed if they increased the player count from the 12v12 to 16 vs 16, as many people have asked for. When I played these older battlefields, I actually didn't really even think about the player counts. I thought 16 vs 16 was fun, 32 vs 32 was chaotic, but it was good chaos, and if you were someone who played Battlefield 3 on console years ago, you had just as much fun playing 12v12s. Yeah, consoles were restricted to 12v12 on Rush. Battlefield 6 being 12v12 was surprising to me, but I don't think it's going to make or break the game mode. I really think the lack of kit restrictions paired with these smaller sectors is what made it feel so bad. In 6, one person could just pick the best meta weapon, grab the supply crate for instant health and ammo, and then just hold the sector by themselves. There's no need to carve out footholds when the sectors are so small, so just rush in, plant, and GG. And this is surprisingly why Liberation Peak is the best version of Rush in Battlefield 6. Although the sectors should be wider, they are still fairly large. Teams can flank around and pick different areas to attack. They can hold different spots to reinforce and then push together. And there's a vehicle, which means both sides have to pick all sorts of different classes and kits in order to counter. Liberation Peak actually gives you a bit more of that proper ebb and flow like the older Battlefield games. And I really felt that when we had a great push on Bravo where we clawed our way to the hillside, we got reinforcements, popped some smoke, had some more revives, some healing, re-ammo, the tank eventually pushed with us, and we were able to secure the plant and then keep the enemies from defusing it. This one 5-minute push was the only time I felt like I was playing a real game of Rush during the entire weekend, and it was awesome. That is why I know that Battlefield 6 does have a great foundation for Rush, we just need better sectors. Now I know I'm going to be like the only person who says this, but I gotta stick to my gut here after playing all the older Battlefields when I say Rush is good in Battlefield 6, but it could be so much better. The actual fights for the MCOMs are really fun. The combat foundation for Rush is fun. I think the MCOM locations are also pretty good. I love this one in Empire State that's both open, but if you flank around and get into this building on the second floor, you can overwatch it. This type of stuff is really cool, and it actually happens throughout all the maps. The big problem is we don't have the sectors to really take advantage of all the maneuvering that should be happening to get here. Additionally, on maps like Liberation Peak, it was so much more fun since you had players picking every single type of gadget. Class balance and restrictions are good for Battlefield, and they are extremely good for Rush. I don't think the devs killed Rush. I don't think this is unsalvageable, but my suggestion to the devs would be to completely overhaul the size of the MCOM sectors. Allow both teams some space to play, and that will help create way more engaging firefights over these objectives. No matter the game, no matter the map, no matter the player count, every single time I played an older version of Rush, I couldn't wait to play the next round as either attackers or defenders. Both sides are fun in past Battlefields because of how dynamic Rush is, and I really hope Battlefield 6 can go back to the drawing board and fix these sectors, because it truly is a fantastic game mode when it's done right. The perfect example to this is also maps like Sane Crossing or Operation Mortar. These are not balanced at all. The defenders have great positions to defend the MCOMs. On Sane Crossing, we're basically getting farmed on the bridges trying to get up to the MCOMs, and hell, Operation Mortar is crazy imbalanced, but it allows you to have a little bit of creativity in how you attack it. Rush in Battlefield 6 is not it, but it's almost there. Just give us more room to play. But what do you guys think? Did you like Rush in Battlefield 6? Was it missing something for you too? Or am I completely off the mark and the entire thing was just straight garbage for you? I'm not going to be offended if you think that way. I know I'm the only one right now that's saying Rush was actually kind of good, but could be better, so let me hear it. Comment down below what you guys think, and if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. But that's it for me. Until next time, peace.